My friends, we all hope we'll never need the services of an attorney. Sometimes, of course, we don't have a choice. This is Dennis Prager here to tell you about William J. Wolfe, attorney at law. William J. Wolfe's practice is limited to injury and wrongful death claims, and although he's been in practice for over 31 years, he is not part of some huge impersonal law firm. To the contrary, when you call William J. Wolfe, that's who you get. This means you also get very personal service. Over the years, William J. Wolfe has successfully taken on many cases that other lawyers have turned down. Now you get the benefit of all that experience. There is absolutely no charge for initial consultation. As I said, we all hope we never need an injury attorney, but if you do, you want one with a lot of experience and one who will handle your case personally. That would be William J. Wolfe, offices at 1121 East Missouri. Hours to fit your schedule. His number, 602-279-1914. 602-279-1914. Outside the Phoenix metro area, 1-800-WOLF-LAW.
Haifa Restaurant is a new Glad Kosher restaurant open on the southwest corner of 12th Street and Northern. Seating for 240. It will be your choice for any large party or just for a kosher lunch or dinner. Wonderful soups, salads, falafel, and meat dishes for every taste. Their hours are Monday through Thursday, noon to 10 p.m., Saturday, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m., Sunday, noon to 11 p.m. Their telephone, 602-944-9600. Tell them I sent you there, and you get a free piece of Russian cake.
This is a paid program and is provided for informational purposes only.
Now on News Talk 960, The Patriot, KKNT. It's the Middle East Radio Forum. Your chance to talk about the turmoil in the Middle East. To call in live, dial anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, attorney William J. Wolfe.
Good afternoon, and welcome to today's edition of Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolfe. As always, the show is available noon to 1 o'clock here in Arizona, and if you're listening on the internet, you have to adjust your time accordingly. 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9 p.m. in the Middle East. I always start my show with my random thoughts, and I'll get to my two guests in a few minutes. I asked last week for people to send me emails as well as phone messages as to whether or not they like the show and they want the show to continue into a third year. I got a lot of very good emails, some good suggestions. I tend to take them to heart, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the phone calls that people have made. I appreciate that you take the time to let me know that you are enjoying this show. So we will be continuing into the next year. Thank you very much. In addition to the local number, we have a toll-free call-in number, 1-888-960-9696. That's 1-888-960-9696. We always welcome your calls. However, for today's show, I'm going to ask that you hold the calls to the break at the bottom of the hour. I don't want to break the flow of this interesting discussion I'm anticipating. So we'll take the calls starting after the second break, which will be at about 12:35. I have in studio Devin Sper. Good afternoon, Devin.
Hi, nice to be here, Bill.
And on the phone, I've got Fayad Shabahat. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And may I call you Fayad?
That's wonderful.
All right, thank you. And where are you calling? Where am I talking to you from right now?
Well, right now you're talking to me in Central Illinois, but I have been working with the University of Wisconsin Divestment from Israel campaign in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay, let me read a little bit off the internet. I have a little bio on you. It says you are a Palestinian right of return activist. You are a lead organizer with the Palestine Solidarity Movement and its divestment campaign, and a former spokesperson of the organization. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and let me get to Devin Sper. Good afternoon to you, Devin.
Good afternoon, Bill.
Devin, you were born and raised in New York. You lived in Israel for 10 years, have a degree in Jewish history from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and served 3 years in the Israel Defense Forces. And since returning to the United States in 1982, you have spoken in defense of Israel to numerous audiences, including radio and television. You are a senior fellow of the Center for Advanced Middle East Studies and the author of The Future of Israel, winner of a 2005 GLYPH Award. What is GLYPH, Devin?
Well, actually, it's Glyph Award, which is a literary award, and I won the award for Best Book on Religion in 2005.
Okay, great. I've asked both of you to be here today. I think sometimes we need to hear both sides of an issue, assuming there are two sides. In any event, obviously there are a lot of discussions about the issues that we talk about here on Middle East Radio Forum. So I wanted to have the audience a chance to hear a Palestinian activist, so I've asked Fayad to be here. And Devin, of course, you've been here on a few occasions already previously. Okay, Devin, what I'm going to do here is I want to have some ground rules, and this is for you, Fayad, also. I want everybody to stick to the subject, please, and this includes all of the callers. Often we take calls that are not on subject. Today I'm going to ask everybody, including my guests, to stick to the subject, and I want no speeches. I want concise answers, and I'm going to allow back and forth between my two guests until I feel that we've exhausted the question. And also, I'm going to allow my guests to ask the other guest questions if it is on topic. So I think that will make for a lively discussion here. Okay, let's start off with something that has been in the news fairly recently. In a recent speech, the president of Iran called for Israel to be wiped off the map. And let's start with Fayad, my guest for the first time. Do you agree with this call for genocide against Israel?
Absolutely not, Will. However, it's very important to understand what these calls mean and put them in context. I mean, what the general attitude that protests Israel as a Jewish state is not a call to kill Jews or commit genocide against them. The general perception here is that Israel, by defining itself as a Jewish state, immediately and effectively declares its discrimination against non-Jews living in it or around it. So what we are trying to prevent here, and what we hope that Israel itself would move away from, is this Zionism or the form of Jewish nationalism, whose similar movements to which has given rise to movements such as Nazism or the Ku Klux Klan or any forms of fascism that committed genocide against civilian populations before.
Okay, let's have Devin give a chance to respond. Same question to you, Devin, and I'll allow you to respond to Fayad, and I'll obviously give him a chance to respond to you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to respond directly to Fayad. Fayad, you have to apply the same criteria to Israel that you apply to other countries. Every Arab country defines itself as an Arab and a Muslim country. And if it is illegitimate for Israel to define herself as a Jewish state, then it is illegitimate for France to define herself as French, or the United States to define itself as the United States, or Arab countries to define themselves as Muslim. You cannot single out Israel. Israel has the right to self-determination, and the Jewish people have exactly the same right to self-determination and to define themselves as do the Arab people. Now, what the president of Iran has done, in fact, is he's done us all a service, because he's clarified for us here the real issue. The real issue is not borders and not alleged and fictitious injustices. The real issue is the existence of Israel. And the real issue is Arab attempts at genocide against Israel going back for over 100 years.
Okay, Fayad, would you like to respond to Devin?
Yes. I mean, just one quick comment is that these general statements can be made and have been made many times throughout history. I can give you an endless list of quotes by Israeli leaders who, for example, in 1937, David Ben-Gurion said, "We must expel Arabs and take their places." When Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, just before signing the peace accord in '93, he referred to Gaza, wishing, and I quote, "if only it would sink into the sea." Ehud Barak referred to Arabs and Palestinians as crocodiles that must be killed. Other leaders, Ariel Sharon, said in 1956 that I don't know something called international principles. I vow that I will burn every Palestinian child will be born in this area. And he bragged about that he, and again quote, "with one hit, I've killed 750 Palestinians in Rafah."
Well, I've never heard of those, but anyway, I'm going to allow Devin to respond to you. Go ahead, Devin.
Well, Fayad, if you want to maintain your credibility, you'll have to give sources for these quotes. These quotes are patently false. Ariel Sharon never said that, to the best of my knowledge. and I don't believe he said that. But everybody who read the newspapers 2 weeks ago knows that the president of Iran called for genocide against Israel.
And Fayad, what I will do, since obviously you're not prepared to give these quotes, if you will email them to me.
I am actually. I can give you specific references.
Where's the reference for Ariel Sharon saying he's going to burn every Palestinian child?
It was an interview with General Ozim Mirham in 1956, and I can email William Wolf the citations for it. And
all right, let me add, so we don't take any more time here. What I'm going to ask you to do is send it to me by email, and I will post it on the website, and I will also give Devin a chance to comment on the citations, because I've read extensively and I've never heard any of these, but I try to keep an open mind, so I'm going to allow you to submit it to me, and we'll put it on the website. Devin, you have a comment?
Yes, I'd still like to get your answer, Fayad, as to whether or not you think that the president of Iran's statement is correct or not, whether or not you believe that genocide against the Jews is justified or not.
I actually started my comment by saying, no, I do not agree with him, and I do not agree with any form of genocide, and I particularly don't agree with the genocide that Israel commits against Palestinians. What I also would like to make clear is that I don't agree with the current structure of Israel being a Zionist exclusively Jewish state, because when it comes to my homeland and it declares itself as an exclusively Jewish state, it negates all of my rights.
And the Palestinians don't declare Palestine an exclusively Arab state. They don't advocate throwing Jews out of all the Palestinian areas. You don't advocate that. We have 1.5 million Jews, Arabs, living in Israel with full civil rights, vote, elected to the Knesset, and nobody is advocating throwing them out. But you, personally, Fayad, advocate throwing the Jews out of Israel. So you're the one advocating apartheid.
You are putting words in my mouth.
Okay, now let's go on to something else here. Would you agree that targeting civilians is evil regardless of one's motives? And I asked Fayad the first question. Go ahead, Devin.
Yes, I, without hesitation, agree that targeting civilians is. I agree that targeting civilians is evil. And Israel has scrupulously avoided targeting civilians. That doesn't mean there isn't collateral damage, as there always is in war. But the Palestinians have made an art out of targeting civilians specifically. When they put a bomb in a nightclub, civilians are not being killed by accident. They are being killed on purpose. When they put anticoagulant rat poison in the bomb, so that people who are hit bleed to death and cannot be saved, they are specifically targeting civilians, and that's evil.
Okay, if I have the same question to you, do you agree that targeting civilians is evil regardless of one's motives?
I absolutely agree, and I think targeting civilians is abhorrent. And I think what I also think is abhorrent is how Devin Sper immediately apologizes for Israel's attacks on civilians and immediately declaring it as collateral damage. I mean, one can easily let the numbers speak for themselves.
Okay, well, let me ask Devin this. Devin, does Israel deliberately target civilians, or do they not? And can you explain your answer? Israel
goes out of its way not to target civilians. Let me give an example from your hometown, Fayad, of Jenin, where, as you know, there was a large battle. You're obviously aware that the Israelis, with either artillery or aircraft or missiles, could have wiped Jenin out in a few hours without risking a single soldier. Instead, they sent men house to house, lost 30 very good soldiers, knowing that that was going to happen in order to protect Arab civilians. So Israel's modus operandi is always to avoid civilian casualties, and the Palestinian modus operandi is to target and hurt as many civilians as possible.
Okay, let's go on to another question.
William, please, if you could allow me a second here. That is not true. In my hometown, the Israelis sent armored bulldozers to destroy much of the refugee camp, and there are hundreds of people that were killed. Dozens of them were buried under rubble, and that is a consistent practice of Israel starting, the 1948 and 1947, when they destroyed whole villages and massacred their population.
Okay, well, let Devin have a response, please.
Well, your very example proves that Israel seeks not to harm civilians. When you send in bulldozers to push down empty houses, you are avoiding hurting civilians, and your lie, And the lie, which you just reiterated, that hundreds of people were killed in Jenin, was declared absolutely false by the UN.
Okay, now I do have to keep moving, otherwise we're never going to get anywhere. Fayad, does Israel have the right to defend itself from terrorists?
Israel has the right to defend itself and protect its citizens, but it will be an empty discussion trying to discuss how you can end terrorism or violence without looking at the causes of it. Every daily practice by Israel against Palestinians generates violence against Israelis.
Okay, we'll get into that. We have to take a break. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. The show is available to you every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock here in Arizona. And you adjust the time if you're listening on the audio streaming on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And we do take calls. As I said at the top of the show, we're taking calls at the bottom of the hour. Local number is 602-508-0960. Toll free is 1-888-960-9696. I also would like to mention that this program is also brought to you by Bethel Congregation, 1118 West Glendale in Phoenix, where Warm Sabbath Experience is available to you every Saturday morning. And as always, I ask my listeners to please help me keep the show coming to you by utilizing the services of my advertisers. And when you do that, that's what keeps them advertising. And however, you need to tell them that you're utilizing their services because you heard about them on this program. That's the key. You have to tell them, I heard about you on the Middle East Radio Forum, and that's why I'm patronizing your business. That's what pays the bills here and keeps the show coming to you. I have a very interesting discussion going today. I have author Devin Sper in studio, and I have Palestinian activist Fayad Shabahat on the telephone. And we've been talking about various issues regarding the Palestinians and the Israelis. This is going to be quite heated, I'm afraid. But anyway, please stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Start this year right with a well-trusted accounting firm here in the Valley, Nelson & Robles PC, certified public accountants in the Valley since 1977. Nelson & Robles PC specialize in monthly accounting and tax preparations for all types of businesses, as well as individuals, trusts, and estates. If you have an accounting or tax need, then call Nelson & Robles PC today at 602-944-4242. That's Nelson & Robles PC, a trusted Valley accounting firm since 1977. 602-944-4242. Call today.
If you're looking for a complete quality computer service company that is knowledgeable, reliable, professional, and fast, you need Ultimate Computer Concepts of Phoenix. We offer service and support for all of your computer needs, and we've been serving the Valley for over 10 years, specializing in computer systems and software, internet service, security, networking, and website hosting and development. Call 602-230-4747 or visit us online at uccinc.net.
This is William J. Wolf to tell you about my favorite Italian restaurant. Sometimes you just want to relax and be indulged. The attentive staff at Christo's Restaurant is available to meet your fine dining needs for dinner Monday through Saturday until 10 p.m. and Monday through Friday for lunch. Let them pamper you with mouth-watering Northern Italian continental cuisine. Christo specializes in fresh seafood, veal, chicken, ossobuco, and pasta dishes that will have you looking forward to your next visit. Enjoy your favorite beverage, a wonderful lunch or dinner, and an unforgettable dessert. And they do the dishes. They are the official Italian restaurant of Middle East Radio Forum. I love their eggplant parmesan and their fish dishes. I'm sure you will have your favorites too. That's Christo's Restaurant, serving great food for 18 years at 6327 North 7th Street. Call them for reservations at 602-264-1784. That's Christo's Restaurant, 602-264-1784. Tell them William Wolf sent you there. As an attorney, I get to know who the experts are in every related field. That's how I came to know Dr. Roger Baker. Dr. Baker is a board-certified chiropractic physician who handles accident injuries. His modern office provides every form of up-to-date healing and pain-relieving therapy, including acupuncture for pain relief and digestion aid. Dr. Baker stays on top of what's new so that his patients have the latest advances in care. Take it from me, you're in the right hands with Dr. Roger Baker. That's Dr. Roger Baker, 602-249-4508. Jewish News of Greater Phoenix is your source for timely news and information about the Jewish community in the Valley and around the world. Our family-owned and operated weekly newspaper has been serving Valley readers for 57 years. To subscribe to Jewish News, call 602-870-9470 or visit www.jewishaz.com. That number again is 602-870-9470 or jewishaz.com.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on News Talk 960, The Patriot, KKNT. To join in the conversation, call in anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Now, back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to today's edition of Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. I have on the telephone from Illinois, Fayad Shabahat. He's a Palestinian activist, and I have author Devin Sper in studio. We're having a lively discussion, to say the least. And as I've said before, please hold the calls until the bottom of the hour, and that's when we'll start taking calls. All right, Fayad, this is a question for you. Are terror organizations like Islamic Jihad, Hamas, the PFLP, and the PLO that routinely target civilians evil, in your opinion?
Well, we have to understand that 5 years ago there was no Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. 12 years ago there was no suicide bombing.
No, I'm asking you about these specific organizations that I've asked you about. Islamic Jihad, Hamas, PFLP, and the PLO. They are known to routinely target civilians. Do you consider these organizations to be evil?
I don't think they do target civilians. I think civilians are victims of their attacks, but their attacks are launched against Israeli soldiers.
Now, wait a minute.
Okay,
I'm going to let Devin ask the question. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to commend you for Fayad for saying that targeting civilians is evil. But now that we're talking about a specific example, you're trying to obfuscate and say that Hamas is not a terrorist organization? Hamas does not target civilians?
Well, I mean, you can make your own definition of terrorist organization.
Well, a definition of blowing up a market last week in Netanya, a mall, is that terrorism, which was claimed by Islamic Jihad, who claimed credit? Is that terrorism?
It is terrorism.
Is that evil?
Because and I think it's wrong because it targets civilians. But it is. I'm telling you, it is a pointless conversation to have if you're not going to talk about the causes of this violence.
Do you think there is any cause, Fayad, that justifies targeting civilians?
Nothing justifies targeting civilians.
I commend you. I commend you for saying that. So, are organizations like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the PFLP, and the PLO that routinely target civilians evil? You define targeting civilians as evil. Are those organizations that do that evil?
Well, prove to me that they do on purpose target civilians.
You just admitted a moment ago that at Netanya last week they targeted civilians when they put a bomb in a mall. When they launched missiles on Israeli towns from Gaza, obviously they're targeting civilians. When they blow up a supermarket, they're targeting civilians.
If you look at the Israelis who were killed in operations by these organizations, with the exception of a few children, and regretfully, children have been killed on both sides, I must say. With the exception of a few children, the vast majority of those who were killed or injured in these attacks were Israeli soldiers, whether active duty or reserve duty.
I'm afraid, Fayad, that in saying that, you're destroying your credibility with all the listeners who watch in this country, unlike where you come from, a fair and open news media that presents not just one side of the story. And they have seen the bombings in Jerusalem, on buses, in Bali, in Chechnya, all over the world, and everybody knows that the targets of these have been overwhelmingly civilians and not soldiers.
No, I mean, you yourself, Mr. Sper, are
Call me
a
Devin,
U.S.
please.
citizen, a New Yorker, and you moved to Israel to become a soldier to kill Palestinians and Lebanese and Syrians in Israel's war. I mean, if you think that you, as a New Yorker, have the right to go live in Palestine and have more right to do so than Palestinians who are living in exile, then this is the actual problem.
Well, Yasser Arafat...
This is the fundamental issue that makes Israel an apartheid regime.
All right, let him respond to you, please.
Yasser Arafat, who was born in Cairo, Egypt, has the right to be the head of the Palestinian national movement then I have the right to go to Israel and join the army and defend my people from the genocidal schemes of people like Hamas, the PLO, and the PFLP. And I'm proud to have done it.
You are proud to have killed Palestinians and Syrians and Lebanese?
I have never killed anyone except another soldier in uniform.
Okay, let's go on to another question, please. The Palestinian elections were recently canceled due to charges of violence and corruption. Many Palestinians complain that the Palestinian Authority is hopelessly corrupt. Fayad, do you agree with that statement?
The Palestinian Authority absolutely suffers from chronic corruption. That's something that has to be dealt with from Palestinians to Palestinians by Palestinians.
Okay, what about all that money that Yasser Arafat received and just converted to his personal use? Do the Palestinian people know about it, and how did they react to that?
See, this is a very well-loved Israeli mythology that shortly after Yasser Arafat died, the Swiss foreign minister felt compelled to go on record on international media to say that there are absolutely no bank accounts in Switzerland that has money, personal accounts for Yasser Arafat. So this is a completely baseless Israeli propaganda.
Okay,
there is
then
corruption, but Yasser Arafat has had no bank accounts to steal money to.
Well, then, with all that billions of money that was sent to the Palestinian people, how come no schools, hospitals, universities were built? It was just the only money that trickled through was going into weapons.
That's not correct. Hospitals were built, an airport was built. Infrastructure were established in almost all Palestinian towns, streets, hospitals, everything. But you have to understand that at the turn of the Second Intifada, at the beginning of the Second Intifada, Israeli forces went and systematically destroyed all the Palestinian infrastructure to the extent of bombing computer labs and internet cafes because they did not want to allow for even the basic technology to be available there. And that's where all the money went.
All right, let me ask another question. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Arab world remains one of the few remaining parts of the world without representative democratic governments. Do you think the Arab world will ever democratize?
It will, and I definitely hope sooner it is than better. And I agree with you that much of the Arab world is ruled by autocratic regimes, oppressive regimes that need to be sent home and fresh new democratically elected leadership brought in. But we all see that the example that the pro-Israel advocates in this country push for, where they want the United States to go in with troops to pacify all of Israel's opponents like Iraq, Syria, Iran, is not working and is going to backfire.
Okay.
So we need to, this is something that can be done by these Arab populations themselves.
Okay. Devin, you have a comment?
Yeah, I again want to commend you, Fayad, for admitting that the Arab world is ruled by corrupt tyrannies. And I want to ask you if you feel that these governments have used the issue of Israel to deflect criticism from their own people who have no civil rights, who have no human rights, and who are oppressed.
I agree with you. Arab regimes used the situation with Israel as a deflection from their own problems. However, this ended up working out better for Israel because they like maintaining Israel as an enemy, and so that they can hang the blame on it. At the same time, this allowed Israel to continue unquestioned by its neighbors, and countries like Saudi Arabia or Egypt are not pushing the United States to speak more firmly with Israel to bring it to the peace table.
Okay, I have to interrupt you. We are coming up on break. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on News Talk 960 The Patriot. My name is William Wolf. The show is available to you every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock. And we have the internet available, so the show is available worldwide on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And as I said before, we're going to start taking calls, so if you want to call, line up now, call in with your question. I'm going to ask you to stay on topic and be very concise. No speeches. Just ask a question, tell us who you're asking, state your question. That's the way it's going to work. Again, this is William Wolf, Middle East Radio Forum. We'll be right back after the break. This is William Wolf to tell you about Scottsdale Kosher Market, your one-stop shop for all your Hanukkah needs. In addition to wonderful kosher groceries, foods from Israel and around the world, fresh meats, baked goods, and a complete sit-down restaurant. They were named the best kosher market by the Arizona Republic. Plus, they have a complete Judaica store. That's Scottsdale Kosher Market on the southeast corner of Shea and Scottsdale Road. They are open Monday through Thursday, 9 to 7, Friday, 8 to 2, Sunday from 9 to 5. Or you can call them at 480-315-8333. That's 480-315-8333. Please tell them that William Wolf sent you there.
Great Middle Eastern food in the Northeast Valley. Eden's Grill, winner of Phoenix Magazine's 2005 Best Restaurant Award, serves wonderful Middle Eastern dishes on the northeast corner of Tatum and Thunderbird Road. Meat, kebabs, or vegetarian, they have it all. Eat in or carry out. They also do great party trays. Open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 9, Sunday, 4 to 9. Mention the Middle East Radio Forum and terrific baklava is yours on the house. That's Eden's Grill, 602-996-5149.
Whenever I pass the corner of 7th Street in Maryland, it's hard to resist making a quick stop at the Maryland Deli and Mini Mart. If I need a cup of coffee, it's always fresh. If I'm in the mood for iced tea, they serve the best China Mist. If I'm hungry, they make the freshest deli sandwiches around with boar's head meats, of course. For a quick treat, they've got Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Need gas? Use your Shell card or their ATM. Open 7 days a week from 5 to 11. The place is always clean and attractive. Seems like there are mini marts on every corner, but there's only one Maryland Deli and Mini Mart, corner of 7th Street in Maryland.
Buying or selling a home? Let Mary Beth Smith make your life easier. She's been a realtor for 18 years and is a certified residential specialist with Realty Executives. Let her show you what her personal service can do for you. Mary Beth has lived in North Phoenix for 30 years but works throughout the Phoenix metro area. Give her a call at 602-434-2900 or visit azqualityhomes.com. That's Mary Beth Smith. Let her expertise work for you. Call her today at 602-434-2900.
Tucked away at the northeast corner of 7th Street in Missouri is that kosher-style New York Chicago deli you've been looking for ever since you moved to the Valley. Scott's Generations. It's just like home. From the complete breakfast, lunch, and dinner menu to the family pictures on the wall. Carryouts, of course. Catering, yes. Stop by, say hi to your hosts Scott and Jean, and pick up a dozen bagels or bialys and get a half dozen free. Your favorite deli from back east is as close as Scott's Generations, 5539 North 7th Street at Missouri. For free delivery, call 277-5662.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on News Talk 960 The Patriot, KKNT. To join in the conversation, call in anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Now, back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. I'm here for you every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock on News Talk 960 The Patriot. The show is available worldwide on my website, MiddleEastRadioForum.org. We're having a very lively discussion, to say the least, between Fayad Shabahat, a Palestinian activist, and Devin Sper, talking about Israel-Palestinian relations and associated issues. I told you we'd take some calls. Let's quickly go to David calling from Skokie. Go ahead, you're on the air. Who are you asking a question of, please?
I'd like to ask a question to Fayad.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, hi. You had mentioned that you would like to see a pluralistic society where all people would have equal rights, certainly more than what appears to be the case currently. What I'd like to ask is, since the Arab world I don't seem to see any other country in the Arab world that comes close to allowing civil rights and a pluralistic society to minorities as well as the majority. And certainly it seems to me like the Israeli Arabs have considerably more civil rights than minority groups in Arab countries as we see them today. How can you assure us in some way that a Palestinian state, as you were envisioning, if I understood it correctly, which would be pluralistic, would in fact be able to actually offer such civil rights?
Fayad, go ahead, please.
William, could you please...
I will try to paraphrase it. He's talking about no Arab country has the rights that Israel does. He's wondering how you could guarantee that Palestine, if it became a state, would offer rights to the people that are not offered in other Arab countries.
Well, I think you gathered this mistaken impression from listening to media that is not given the fair picture. A lot of the media in the U.S. is trying to paint as if Arabs as a race lack the ability to be an open society or be a free and pluralistic society. That is absolutely not true, and it would be rather racist to say so. And I'm David, I'm not accusing you of doing that. I know such general statements have been said. However, this is a very good question, and I think the Palestinians are capable of establishing a pluralistic society and are intended to, especially because they have been persecuted for the last so many decades and living under oppression and occupation.
Okay,
they realize that the importance of freedom and democracy and pluralism.
All right, Fayad, to get everybody on, I've got to move a little quicker. Devin, do you have a response to David's question?
Yeah, first of all, that certainly hasn't been the case in the Palestinian Authority till now. The first thing that Yasser Arafat did upon being elected was put in jail editors who didn't agree with him. Some of them were kneecapped, shot, murdered, harassed. So that isn't the case till now, although I hope that Fayad is right and they will democratize in the future. I just want to make a comment about Fayad's intimation that we don't have the true picture here and he does. He comes from a part of the world where there isn't a single newspaper that presents a pro-Israeli point of view or so much as a pro-Israeli article. In Israel and in the United States, we have open debate as we're having on this show, and we hear both points of view. I think the listeners can make up their minds for themselves who's getting the true picture.
Okay, thank you. Let's quickly go to Steve calling from Scottsdale. Go ahead. Who's your question directed to?
This is for Fayad. Fayad, you told the listeners, if I heard you correctly, that the PLO, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PFLP only target Israelis. So without generalizing, let me ask you, who were they targeting when they blew up the Swiss airplane February 1970 over Europe? Who were they targeting when they hijacked Swiss Air, British Overseas Airways, Pan Am, TWA to Jordan as they tried to overthrow the legitimate government of an Arab country, Jordan? Who were they targeting when they unleashed Japanese terrorists hired by the PFLP to shoot 27 Puerto Rican Christian pilgrims in an airport? These are not Israelis. These terror groups are fighting the world. Who are they? Would you agree now that this is just not targeting Israelis?
Go ahead, Fayad. We got a break coming up, but go ahead quickly, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would really urge you to get the facts straight. You're talking about Hamas hijacking airplanes in the 70s. Hamas was established in 1989, and you're asking me about an attack by the Japanese Red Army as if I'm responsible for it. Palestinian groups have not targeted non-Israelis. Absolutely not anywhere. The one attack that they have committed outside, or the few attacks they committed outside of the borders of historic Palestine, were also targeting Israelis.
Okay, Devin, quickly, we're coming up on break. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Steve, Fayad didn't say they target only Israelis. He was more specific. He said they target only Israeli soldiers, which is, of course, patently false. But they do, in fact, target non-Israeli Jews. They did at Entebbe, where they hijacked Air France. They did when they blew up the synagogue in Istanbul. When they blew up recently the synagogue in Tunisia, that's, by the way, a 3,000-year-old synagogue.
Al-Qaeda
wait a second.
Responsibility for...
All right, hold on a second. We're coming up on break. I'm going to allow everybody to jump into the conversation. I apologize for interrupting, but the computer will cut me off. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on News Talk 960 The Patriot. My name is William Wolf. The show, again, available to you every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock here in Arizona, and worldwide on the internet on the website MiddleEastRadioForum.org. And again, I ask you to please utilize the services of my advertisers, and please tell them that you heard about them on this program. That will help keep the show coming to you. Please stay with us. We'll be coming right back after the break with the last segment of today's Middle East Radio Forum. Haifa Restaurant is a new Glatt Kosher restaurant open on the southwest corner of 12th Street and Northern. Seating for 240. It will be your choice for any large party or just for a kosher lunch or dinner. Wonderful soups, salads, falafel, and meat dishes for every taste. Their hours are Monday through Thursday, noon to 10 p.m., Saturday, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m., Sunday, noon to 11 p.m. Their telephone, 602-944-9600. Tell them I sent you there, and you get a free piece of Russian cake.
Estate planning. It's something you know in the back of your mind that you ought to be doing, but you just haven't gotten around to it yet, right? Well, maybe it's because you aren't quite sure what estate planning is really all about, or maybe you don't know where to turn for advice. Well, here's a suggestion. Make a call to Carmen Cercone of the Householder Group. His specialty is trust planning with an emphasis on estate preservation and tax reduction, and he's been doing it successfully in the Valley for over 24 years. Let Carmen Cercone put that kind of experience to work for you. Right now, he's offering a complimentary estate and retirement analysis just for calling him at 480-556-9600. That's 480-556-9600. For greater convenience, Mr. Cercone has offices at 7th Street in Missouri and Phoenix, and at 87th and Via Ventura at the 101 in Scottsdale. Call for your complimentary appointment first thing tomorrow at 480-556-9600. Mr. Cercone is a registered representative offering securities through Sun America Securities, a member NASD, SIPC, and a wholly owned subsidiary broker-dealer of American International Group Incorporated.
If you're looking for a complete quality computer service company that is knowledgeable, reliable, professional, and fast, you need Ultimate Computer Concepts of Phoenix. We offer service and support for all of your computer needs, and we've been serving the Valley for over 10 years, specializing in computer systems and software, internet service, security, networking, and website hosting and development. Call 602-230-4747 or visit us online at uccinc.net.
As an attorney, I get to know who the experts are in every related field. That's how I came to know Dr. Roger Baker. Dr. Baker is a board-certified chiropractic physician who handles accident injuries. His modern office provides every form of up-to-date healing and pain-relieving therapy, including acupuncture for pain relief and digestion aid. Dr. Baker stays on top of what's new so that his patients have the latest advances in care. Take it from me, you're in the right hands with Dr. Roger Baker. That's Dr. Roger Baker, 602-249-4508. Jewish News of Greater Phoenix is your source for timely news and information about the Jewish community in the Valley and around the world. Our family-owned and operated weekly newspaper has been serving Valley readers for 57 years. To subscribe to Jewish News, call 602-870-9470 or visit www.jewishaz.com. That number again is 602-870-9470 or jewishaz.com.
Whenever I pass the corner of 7th Street in Maryland, it's hard to resist making a quick stop at the Maryland Deli and Mini Mart. If I need a cup of coffee, it's always fresh. If I'm in the mood for iced tea, they serve the best China Mist. If I'm hungry, they make the freshest deli sandwiches around with boar's head meats, of course. For a quick treat, they've got Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Need gas? Use your Shell card or their ATM. Open 7 days a week from 5 to 11. The place is always clean and attractive. Seems like there are mini marts on every corner, but there's only one Maryland Deli and Mini Mart, corner of 7th Street and Maryland.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on News Talk 960, The Patriot, KKNT. To join in the conversation, call in anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Now, back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to today's final segment of Middle East Radio Forum. We have a very lively discussion going on. Fayad Shabahat, a Palestinian activist, and author Devin Sper are debating various issues regarding the Israeli-Palestinian situation. And we had Steve on the line. And Steve, I understand you'd like to ask a follow-up question. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify for the listeners because Fayad said I had the wrong facts. I specifically indicated it was the PFLP General Command that blew up the Swiss airplane in 1970. It is the PFLP that sponsored the quadruple hijackings. It's the PLO that tried to overthrow the legitimate Arab government of Jordan. It was the PFLP that killed Puerto Rican pilgrims. It is the PFLP that is running right now for January 2000. 2006 Palestinian Authority elections under the slogan, "Destroy the Zionist Entity." And the heading candidate or leading candidate on the PFLP list is Ahmed Saadat, a known terrorist murderer. So how can we not know the facts when they are here for us in our media and around the world?
Okay, well, I thank you for that clarification. I've got to go on to some other questions, otherwise we're never going to get anywhere on the show. All right, Fayad, let me ask you, do you feel the Palestinians made a mistake in rejecting the 1947 UN partition plan?
Well, in 1947, you have to understand that things are different. You cannot simply try to paint it in black and white.
Well, at the time, do you feel they made a mistake?
Well, I was not there to know what kind of process was.
Well, surely you're aware of what the historical facts were.
Yes, but when you live in your country and all of a sudden somebody asks you directly to give half of it away, your first inclination is to say no. And at the same time, the Palestinians were not included in the discussions of the partition plan. So that's very important to understand. However, if you want to ask for my opinion, and I'm a person who believes in moving forward and reconciliation, and it's easy to debate historical facts, but to move forward, I think we need to come to a resolution that is based on peaceful mutual respect and coexistence that is also rooted in international law, particularly the partition plan.
Okay.
We have two different populations sharing land, and we have to account for that.
Okay, let's let Devin have a chance to respond.
Well, I agree that we need to move forward, but to do so, we have to base ourselves on truth. We can't base ourselves on statements like the ones you've made that Hamas is not a terrorist organization and that these organizations have not targeted Israeli civilians. If we're going to move forward, Fayad, we have to deal with the truth, harsh as that may be. And I want to say something about a comment you just made, that it was your country and the UN gave it away. It simply was not your country. It has never been your country. There was never a country called Palestine, and that's simply a historical fact. Now, you may want it to be your country, but that doesn't make it your country. The Jews have lived in the land of Israel for over 3,000 years continuously, and I submit to you, Fayad, that a Jew has the same right to live anywhere he wants to live in the land of Israel as does an Arab. And it is not your country exclusively. And this is the crux of the matter, because you and the Palestinian movement think that you have exclusive rights to the country.
Okay, let's quickly go to Jim calling from Tempe. Jim, do you have a question, and which person would you like to ask?
In fact, there's a separate Palestinian people. From 1949 to 1967, the area known as the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, was under control of Jordan. Why did not the Jordan and other Arabs get together and say, look, we have a separate people here, let's set up a state, we're in control of this territory?
Okay, Fayad, you want to answer that question from Jim?
As I mentioned earlier, it's really easy to debate historical facts in retrospect, but that will get us nowhere. What I am saying is that historic Palestine, and Mr. Sper actually referred to it as Palestine at the beginning of the show. It was Palestine, it was under British mandate, and Palestinians hosted Jewish immigrants coming from Europe. And there was Palestinian Jews living in Palestine under equal rights, and many of them today live in Palestinian towns like Nablus, refuse to recognize Israel as an exclusively Jewish state. And coincidentally, in 2002, Israeli warplanes bombed their synagogue in the middle of the city of Nablus. So to say that there is a difference between saying a Palestinian state for all of its population, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish, and saying a Jewish state, if you're Muslim, atheist, or Christian, you're going to be kicked out. Since 1948, 90% of Palestinian Christians had to leave Palestine. Cities like Nazareth, Jerusalem, and Bethlehem are losing their Christian population. The holy sites are losing their Christian population because of Israeli oppression.
Okay, well,
that's what we need to solve, not just keep...
Okay, let's give Devin a chance. And also, I don't think you really answered Jim's question. He was asking that when Jordan had control of the area, how come the countries didn't get together and create a Palestinian state. Devin, go ahead, please.
Well, it's true that Christians have been leaving Bethlehem and Nazareth and other cities, Arab cities, but it's not because of any Israeli oppression. It's because of Muslim oppression. The Muslims are persecuting Christians throughout the Arab world, not only in Palestine, but in Armenia, in Chechnya, in the Assyrian Christians. Look at what they're doing in Darfur, where they're murdering blacks, or the Christians in the south of Sudan, where they're committing genocide against them. So this has nothing to do with anything Israel's doing. This is typical Muslim intolerance and Arab racism.
Okay, let's go to Howard calling from Phoenix. Go ahead. I want to make sure I get all the callers on. Howard, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Since it's already been discussed that the Jews have been continuously in the area for over 3,000 years, and there's no record of Palestinians living there at all, when the Palestinians decided they wanted their own country, why did none of the neighboring Arab states give them some territory to call their own?
Okay, Fayad, do you want to respond to Howard?
Well, there is a record of Palestinians living. My family has been in Palestine for over 600 years. It is you can look at, if you want to go back and say 3,000 years ago Jews were living there. That's correct, and those are people who are Canaanites then became Palestinians. Some were, their faith was Judaism, some was Christian, and eventually some became Muslims. So ethnicity is different than religion. To tell me about somebody who is from New York or from Germany has the right to Palestine just because he's Jewish, I disagree with that.
Okay, let's let Devin have a chance to respond.
I didn't say simply that Jews have lived there for 3,000 years. I said they've lived there for 3,000 years continuously. Jews have lived in places, for example, Fayad, like Hebron, for 3,000 years continuously. And so a people that has lived in a land for 3,000 years is not occupiers, is not foreigners, and has the same right to live in that land as do the Arabs. Now, nobody is in fact advocating that the Arabs have to leave. Nobody in the Israeli government is trying to throw Arabs not only not out of Gaza or the West Bank, but out of Israel. There are 1.5 million Arabs in Israel, and they enjoy full civil rights, and they've gone many times to the Israeli Supreme Court and won arguments against the Israeli government. It is you and people like you who are advocating that Jews have to leave your areas. So, in fact, it is you who is advocating apartheid, not us.
Okay, let's ask another question. I have to get these in before the show is over. Fayad, what do you think would have happened to Israel had it lost the 1948 War of Independence?
If Israel did not launch the war of aggression against Palestinians to take over 80% of Palestine, to turn it into Israel, the Jews would have continued to live in Palestine as citizens with equal rights. And I agree with Mr. Sper that Palestinians in Israel have equal rights. When one of them tried to run for a prime minister office, he was banned, and from diplomatic immunity, he was threatened. Palestinian towns are ghettos. They don't have their civil liberties. They are a third, fourth class citizen group, and not even just the Palestinian Arabs. Even Israeli Arab Jews who come from the Arab countries are discriminated against. And one example is that the recent victory by an Oriental Jew who won the leadership position in the Labour Party, it created an earthquake in Israel. People, Paris and Sharon and all the top politicians in the country left their parties, tried to create a new party so that this person of Arab descent does not get a chance to win a high position in Israeli politics. That's how far the racism goes.
Okay, well, let's let Devin have a chance to respond. Go ahead, Devin.
Well, there are so many things wrong with that statement, I'm not sure where to begin. First of all, you said the Israeli War of Aggression in 1948. Israel was formed, and the following day, 12 Arab countries and the Palestinian Arabs declared war on her, not the other way around. Now, they lost the war, but that doesn't mean that Israel has to now apologize for her survival or for foiling their genocidal schemes. It is the Arabs who launched the war who are responsible for its consequences, including the Palestinian refugee problem, and not Israel for a war which she did not start and did not seek. Now, regarding Palestinian rights in Israel, there may be flaws in, and it may not be a perfect society, but I challenge you, Fayad, to show me an Arab country in which Jews have rights, or including the Palestinian Authority, in which Jews have any rights. A Jew cannot set foot in Saudi Arabia according to Saudi law. Jews are second-class citizens according to Muslim doctrine. They're dhimmi. And there is no comparison between the rights of a Jew in any Arab country and the rights of an Arab in Israel. I further submit to you there is no comparison between the right of a Palestinian Arab in Israel and the right of an Arab in any Arab country. Show me an Arab country in which any Arab can start a newspaper of his own, can run for the Knesset, can sit in the government, can go to the Supreme Court, in which there is an independent judiciary, in which there is an independent press. You cannot compare Israel to a vacuum. You have to compare her to the real world. And you have to compare Israeli rights given to people who are at war with her, which are exemplary, considering the situation, to the rights they're given in their own countries, and not to some sort of ideal vacuum.
Okay, Fayad, obviously I'm going to give you a chance to respond. Go ahead, please.
You cannot develop a list of crimes and violations committed by other governments to give a blank check of oppression to the Israeli government. Just because somebody is doing it wrong somewhere does not mean Israel should get the right to do it. And that is part of the Israeli propaganda.
Well, I'm challenging you.
A lot of them just...
I'm challenging you on the fact that there is oppression. I think that a people who has the right to sit in the Knesset, who has the right to go to the Supreme Court, who lives unmolested day by day in their houses and has every civil right protected, is not oppressed. They're not oppressed by any sort of standard.
Okay, Fayad, go ahead. You have a chance to respond.
Farmland.
Sorry, we didn't hear your question.
I'm saying I do not have the right to go to my grandfather's olive orchard. I cannot visit my family across the 1967 border. Half of it is there. I have not seen them in years. So you can pick a few momentous headlines from the newspaper and call Israel the most democratic state in the world, but that is simply not true.
Well, it is certainly true. It is certainly true that Israel is the most democratic state in the Middle East by far. There's no comparison, except maybe for a future Iraq. There's no Arab country that allows its own citizens the rights that Israel allows all of its citizens, Arabs and Jews. Now, I'm sure that it's true that you can't go to your grandfather's olive grove, and that's because the Israelis have been forced to build a wall to defend themselves against suicide bombing. And you're doing what is typical on the Palestinian side. You're trying to separate cause and effect. You're trying to deal only with the Israeli response to terror and not with the terror that caused the response. That would be like saying that the FBI was too harsh on some Ku Klux Klansmen and ignoring the terror that they committed, which brought about the reaction in the first place.
Okay, we are coming up on the end of the show. Fayad, do you have a quick response to Devin Sper?
Yes, I just would like to end with this statement, is that it is important to understand the historical facts and debate them. However, for the sake of moving forward, it is important to look at resolution, to look at what can be done. The ideas that Mr. Sper advocates, for example, in his book, by making Israel a superpower to crush all of its neighbors, are not 21st century ideas. We're in a time where we look for peace and reconciliation, and that's what we need to do. We need to look to a solution where both Palestinians and Israelis can live as equal citizens with equality under law. Palestinians have rights too.
Okay, Fayad, I hate to interrupt you because we are coming up on 1 minute and I have to do a promo for the next show. I'm going to invite you to come back with Devin Sper at some time in the future. I think this is an important debate to have. I appreciate your being here on Middle East Radio Forum. You've been listening to Fayad Shabahat and Devin Sper debating various issues regarding the Israeli-Arab conflict, and we're going to invite both of them back in the future. Next week, historian Dr. Steve Carroll will return to continue the discussion on the 1973 Yom Kippur War. After suffering many losses, the tide finally turns in favor of Israel, and I'm sure you're going to want to listen to that show. Dr. Carroll is always very interesting. Again, the show is available to you every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock, worldwide on the internet at middleeastradioforum.org. Please spread the word about the show, and I think it's important for people to listen to what we talk about here, and I appreciate the fact that you listen. And again, I will appreciate the fact that if you talk to my advertisers, let them know that you heard about them on this show. Thanks very much. See you next week.